I'm going to show you guys how to extract clay from dirt. Since I'm building the rocket mass here, I decided that I better test the soil that I'm getting out of the back field for clay content. And I took an ice cream bucket like this, and I already did this. I had filled the ice cream bucket right up to, I don't know, maybe 3-4 inches deep, and extracted this, which is a big chunk of clay. For such a small amount of earth. But this is literally pure clay. All the sand is filtered out, all the organics and stuff, so that's what my cob will be made of. But of course I'm not going to extract all the sand and stuff when I make the cob, because the sand actually helps in the density of the cob, so I'm going to be adding sand to it. But I was just curious what the clay content was, and the experiment was so fun that I decided I would show you guys how I did it. Start off, I'm going to do a smaller batch than that, because that actually took about 3 days. And we're hoping to get this done a little bit quicker, like, you know, by the end of the day. It's about noon now, so we'll see what we get. But first, we're just going to take some dirt and put into a jar. I'm using clear jars so you guys can actually see what's happening in there, and we'll get some close-ups of that as we get to that point, but maybe some time lapse of it settling. I'm going to go about halfway here and a little bit more. Okay, so the chunks and stuff don't matter. You want it fairly fine, but you don't need it like dirt fine, if you will. So we're going to get this out of the way. And then what we do is we add water. We're going to leave a little bit of airspace at the top, because your next step is to cap it off and start shaking it up. Now what happens when you do that is all kinds of little particles get suspended in the water. And that's what you want. That's awfully small. I think we're going to switch to the ice cream bucket. We'll get back into the jar. So then we're going to pour water out of it through this little sieve or sifter. And the sifter simply grabs the organics that are floating around in there. All the heavy stuff stays in there. Then we're just going to add more water and do it again. This is causing the sand to stay in here. The organics are getting caught in the filter, in the screen, and the clay suspended in the water goes through the sleeve and into the thing below. But it's an awful lot of water, or an awful lot for very little clay. But we'll show you how to take care of that here in a moment. If you were able to feel this, well, you can see on the outside of the jar how that's sand stuck to the side of the jar. Now the sand is coated in clay, which is why it's sticky. But you can keep doing this for as long as you want to extract as much of the clay particles as possible. It's always good to have a rag handy. I'm doing this on a plastic table because, well, it's easy to clean. I'm going to do one more, and then we'll put it into different jars and let it start settling. And if a few chunks fall and hit this, it's okay, because they're not going to go through. In fact, I'm going to let quite a bit of chunks fall. Because this has now got enough organics in the bottom of it that the sand won't even go through it. And I'm up to the bottom of my... That's crazy. There it started sliding. All right. You know what? Here's the other trick you can use. Put a big clump of the sand and clay that's left in the bottom. This soil doesn't have much for rock in it, by the way. I just happened to get lucky that way. So I'm not really filtering any rocks out other than the sand. Now, of course, a little bit of the sand is going to go through, but as I say, we'll show you how to get rid of that in a little bit. There we go. I'll take care of this. So now we're just going to let it sit. What'll happen is the clay will sink down to the bottom and settle, and the sand, a little bit will be in there. And then up on top we'll just have water. And then we're going to extract the clear water, and then we'll process it further to get the usable clay out of it. So for now, I'm going to stick you on time lapse so you can see it settle. So you weren't going to be able to see it settling too well in that other container. So I decided I would switch it over to this one where you'll be able to see it better. There's already that much settled in the bottom of it. And I gotta get that out of there because that's part of the clay. That's better. All right, so right now, and I can tell you from what I just touched, it's feeling kind of gritty, which means there's still sand in it. But as you watch this, it will start settling to the bottom. So I'm going to stick you on time lapse. This will probably be about 2 hours and just a few minutes, or maybe less. But anyway, here we go. Okay, so that was about 45 minutes, and it seems to have settled pretty well. So we're going to start the next phase. All right, so now we're going to get rid of some of this excess water. There's a couple of ways of doing this. I'm just going to pour the clear stuff into this bucket, but you could also use like a siphon hose and actually siphon the water out into the bucket, whatever. For this, I'm actually going to be resettling this again when I start doing the filtering out the sand with the little jars here. But you're just going to pour that water along with all the particles floating in it, which is what we're trying to get rid of. And we're going to see a little bit of the clay come out. All right. Let me set that aside. Now we're going to resuspend the clay into much less water. So it's going to look like very dirty water. And this is how we start getting rid of the majority of the sand. We're going to stick it into a jar. That is all I'm going to get. So most of what you see left in the bucket there, I don't know if I'm holding this the right way for you to see it, but anyway, this stuff stuck along here is actually sand. There's not much clay left in that. And to continue getting rid of the sand, actually I'm going to put a tray down. You notice tote lids work for a lot of things. This is going to dribble a little. Or maybe not. We've still got some clay in that. Whenever you get to this point, you can pour a little bit into your hand and feel it, and you'll be able to feel whether there's much sand there or not. If there's not much sand, keep it. Now we're getting into more gritty stuff. I'm going to rinse this jar out. Hope you all are enjoying the sounds of Dart over here chowing down. And we're just going to do this again. Still pretty smooth. Alright, I'm going to get rid of this. And now we're going to wait for that to settle. Okay, on to the next phase. We're going to get rid of the water again. We don't want it to settle too much or it'll get really hard to get out of here. So just take our little bucket here. Alright, let me empty the water out of this. Alright, so this next part you need some kind of fabric, preferably a couple layers of it. And I'm going to use a piece of this old sheet. But you can use a t-shirt, a towel, whatever you happen to have handy that you don't care if it gets tore up. This is a junk find, so I don't really care about it. And if you have something to tie around here, that usually works pretty good. There's not very much clay here, so I'm just going to tuck the ends underneath, and hopefully the weight of the bucket and water that's in the bucket here in a moment will hold it from falling in. But basically we want to mix this up, get all that clay suspended in what little bit of water is left. Again. Not bad. Got rid of the last of the sand, or a little more of the sand. And now it's a waiting game. Now that big chunk I showed you at the beginning of this video, when I got to this point, it took 2 days for it to dry enough to actually be usable. However, this, being a much smaller piece, that was Vita. Anyway, she's going to be playing with the clay later on, I'm sure. But anyway, while we're waiting for the water to just go through the material, and what's left in the material is your clay. So it's pretty slick, and it's a lot of fun. But like I said, the other piece took 2 days. This one being a lot smaller, hopefully won't take near as long. The more surface area of material you have, the better too. But then you got to scrape all the clay off of it when you're done. But anyway, I'll put this on time lapse and let y'all enjoy watching the clay drain. So we made a little bit of progress here, and you can see there's still a little bit of water on top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this is a sculpting tool for clay actually, and I'm going to scrape the sides down. And I want to scrape down to a level below the most liquid parts. And what that does is kind of opens up the fabric to let more of the water through while trapping the clay. This has been sitting, you were on time lapse there for about 30 minutes, so it wasn't all that long. As I said, it's not a fast process, but it's kind of fun to see what you can get by the end of it. We'll let that sit for a little longer. And we've got a bit more of it gone. I'm checking this about every 30 minutes and scraping it down. I actually think we're far enough along to go to the next stage. So we're going to try that. Give me just a sec to get reset. Okay, so now we can take this out of the little bucket, and you can actually see there's quite a bit of water came out. Now I'm going to make my disclaimer is that this is not the only way to do this. This may not even be the appropriate way to do this, but it does work. But now what we're going to do is let this cloth actually start soaking the water out of the clay. And we're going to mush it around in there a little bit. And by the way, this happens to be 60% cotton. The more cotton content in the piece you're using to do this, the better. Nice and messy. Grab another piece of the sheet. And now with that, I'm going to set some weight on top of it. Use that bucket, stick the jars in it. And that's just to put some pressure on that to let it soak up into that sheet. And I'm going to let that sit for a while, and then we'll be back. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes, maybe 15. And if I did this right, when I peel this back, that part that had came over before should be staying down, stuck down, like that. And there you go. That is your clay. I am seeing if I can fold this stuff up. And it'll slowly but surely make a neat little ball. So yeah, that seems to have worked. Now it's still pretty wet, too wet to work, but it is now actually clay. So what we want to do is get it onto something that's a bit more dry. And I'm going to use a towel for that. Pick it up like a doggy, like doggy doo-doo. And we'll let it start drying in that for a while. But out of that little bit that was in that jar, let's pull this open here. Out of that little bit that was in that jar, we came up with that much clay, which, is a small handful, but a handful nonetheless. It'll lose a little bit more mass as it dries out some more, but otherwise, pretty good deal.
See, I was warm.
So now after this sits overnight, it should be stiff enough to actually be used. Like I said, it's a little soft right now, but leave it covered overnight like that, and it will come out just fine. Now this is the piece that I already made. Now it's nice and malleable and stiff. And I was going to show you all that it indeed cuts like clay. Now I haven't done what they call wedging yet on these, so you'll see all these little air pockets in there. That's because I haven't wedged it yet. You must wedge your clay before you use it, or it'll have all kinds of voids in it, air pockets and whatnot, that will create issues when you go to put it in the kiln and fire it. So I'm going to have to do that to this. I'll have to do that to that little piece. But basically you just keep rocking it around. I am not a professional at this. I have not done it much. And I don't even know if you guys got to see all that. Anyway, just in case you didn't, when I cut through this, see that little mark there, and it's in here. Those are air pockets inside the clay, and got to get those out before you actually fire it. So I will be wedging this for, I don't know, a while, because it is kind of a drawn out process. And it's still just tacky enough. It's not coming off the tool clean. That's actually what I'm looking for. That'll take a while. I don't know, maybe once I wedge it. But you need to wedge it on something that's semi-absorbent, like smooth concrete, or I guess plaster, or like a sheetrock will work, but you have to put fabric over the sheetrock, or the clay, the moisture in the clay will weaken the paper on the surface, and then you'll end up with little pieces of paper in your clay. So you gotta stop that from happening. The other purpose of wedging, apparently, is to align the particles in the clay so that it's all laying in the same direction, kind of like the grain in wood, or like in metal when you're forging and you heat it up and let it cool slowly, or temper it or whatever. So, but anyway, that's pretty much one way to make clay from dirt in your, well, in my case, in the field. In your case, it might be your yard or a local riverbank. It's a real good place to hunt for clay, because you can scrape away the topsoil and you'll get down to the clay, which is actually why the water will pool there. If there wasn't clay, then it wouldn't pool there. Ponds, another good place. I remember actually collecting clay from my uncle's pond when I was little to play with. Of course, we didn't know how to purify it, or I didn't know how to purify it back then, but we'd still collect it. It was still a lot of fun. Of course, that was pretty pure stuff out there on his property. So, anyway, have fun with it. It is what it is. I now will be able to make some serious hard setting cob, or at least I'll know that my clay that I get from the field will make some serious hard setting cob. So that means the rocket mass heater is that much closer to being reality. It's still probably going to be a little while, because I have to wait for it to warm up enough that my cob doesn't freeze before it dries. And that is the issue with building a masonry heater during the winter. So anyway, guys, until next time, have fun. We'll see you.